This is the entrance to Oglebay Park in Wheeling, West Virginia. This is a beautiful municipal park where people come on a daily basis to enjoy the outdoor beauty that only Mother Nature can provide. However, there's also a very special indoor attraction at Oglebay Park. This is the largest model railroad in the state of West Virginia, and it's found in the main building of the Good Zoo at Oglebay. This huge O-gauge layout is absolutely stunning, with lots of beautiful scenery, accurately detailed buildings, an operating riverboat, and several model trains that run through the imaginary world of this miniature railroad and village. How this model railroad was built is a fascinating story. This large room in the lower level of the zoo building was going to become vacant in September of 1981, and it would be available for a new display. A consensus was quickly reached that the best use of this room was a model railroad display. Don Buzz Busey, Steve Mitch, and John Hargelrode, the brains behind the project, approached the Oglebay management, and as they say, the rest is history. Even though the room would not be vacant until September, work actually began on the railroad in March of 1981. The track diagram and the general layout of the scenery was agreed upon, and a mock-up of the entire layout was built to help with the Imagineering of the railroad. Twice a week, for 4 to 5 hours each night, volunteers donated their time and creativity to designing and kit-bashing buildings, painting people, and building the bridges that would be needed. And as they were completed, the various structures that would be used on the layout were carefully placed on storage shelves, waiting for the opportunity to take their place on the railroad. As the summer progressed, the twice-weekly meetings grew to almost every night. Obviously, the enthusiasm level on this project was very high. One of the most beautiful structures on the railroad is this high, curved trestle. This bridge is over 5 feet long and was painstakingly constructed by Pat Kelly, an Oglebay Park employee. Pat was so confident of the sturdiness of his bridge that he actually tested its strength by sitting on it. Finally, on September 8, 1981, construction began on the railroad itself. Opening day for the model railroad was just over 3 months away, so there was no time to waste. The first construction obstacle the crew had to overcome was unique. The previous display in this room, an animated puppet display, used a wooden platform for the stage, but it was much too low for a model railroad display. However, due to the time schedule, it was decided to use this platform rather than tear it out and build a completely new one. So the entire platform was slowly jacked up using hydraulic jacks, auto jacks, and concrete blocks. Now this platform was made from 2x4s, 2x10s, and 3/4-inch plywood, so it was heavy. After the platform was raised, construction began on the railroad. A drawing of the track plan was laid out on the wood. This enabled the builders to visualize what portions of the platform could be cut away for easier access underneath the mountains. The upper-level benchwork was begun using a combination of tabletop and L-girder construction. This is the area where the logging and mining railroad was going to be built. During week number 2, the river channel was cut out, revealing the graceful curves of the new riverbed. A special track was laid underneath the center of the riverbed so that the boat could actually move through the water instead of just being a static display. We'll show you the riverboat in action in a few minutes. There were usually several crews working on the layout at the same time. While the track crew built the risers, anchored the roadbed, and laid the 625 feet of Gargraves track used on the railroad, the scenery crew started mixing the over 2,000 pounds of B11 hydrocal that went into making the mountains, rocks, and other scenery. By the start of week 4, most of the scenery supports had been installed, and the riverbed was made out of several layers of fiberglass matting and resin, and then filled with over 100 gallons of water. The mountains themselves began to take shape as the hydrocal experts really went to work. The bridges over the river valley were set in place as the mainline tracks were finished on the lower level. While all this was going on, local artist Steve Lemley began work on the huge scenic backdrop which gives this railroad its unique look. Steve worked on this backdrop for the entire construction period. As the track work progressed, Steve had to be very careful about where he placed his chair so as not to damage the mainline track. The next several weeks were a blur of activity. Hundreds of trees that had been made in the earlier work sessions were placed on the layout. Airbrush painting the mountains and adding the trees changed the scenes from stark wood and hydrocal to very realistic looking scenes. Every good display model railroad must be well lit, so work was started on that project. Special spotlights were installed to add highlights and shadows to the scenery on the railroad. A valance was also installed to hide the lights from visitors and make the lighting system more decorative. Meanwhile, opening day was getting closer and closer. By the end of the 6th week of construction, Steve had completed the backdrop, and what a job he had done. During weeks 7 and 8, landscaping was the main focus of the project. Trees were added to the mountainsides and structures were placed on the layout. Track was ballasted, bridges secured, towns were built, and all the hundreds of other details that make up a world-class model railroad display were taken care of. Just a few days before the official grand opening, only minor details remained. Rolling stock and motive power were now on the layout, and the main tracks had been checked carefully for smooth operation. As a final touch, a decorative skirting was placed all around the layout, giving the whole thing a polished, professional, and finished appearance. What had begun as a simple idea was now a reality. The Oglebay Park Miniature Railroad and Village was open for business. There are a lot of things to see on the Oglebay Park Miniature Railroad and Village, so let's take a tour of this wonderful railroad. One of the largest structures on the railroad is this huge blast furnace built by Oglebay volunteer Art Griffith. Art was a retired steelworker with over 35 years' experience working in a blast furnace similar to this one. His knowledge and expertise in this area was so good that Art actually scratch-built this massive structure without using any drawings or blueprints. It's all built from his memory of what the real thing looked like. Sadly, Art is no longer with us, but his legacy lives on in this beautifully done blast furnace scene, so typical of those found in steel mills in the Wheeling, West Virginia area. Just down the road from the mill is this miniature village, complete with a very busy passenger station. Trains come and go here all day, as the people of the village use the railroad to travel throughout their miniature world. The houses in the village were repainted and re-roofed to make them look like they were built in the early to mid-1900s. Chooch Enterprises, Magnuson models, and heavily modified K-line and Plasticville kits were used for the business section of the town. Up at the north end of town, the local drive-in theater is just getting its show on the road. Remember how they always showed a cartoon before the feature? They do it the same way here. As with many places in West Virginia, there's a river running through the town, and on that river is the Robert E. Lee, a beautiful riverboat built by Steve Mitch. Underneath the fiberglass riverbed, there's a 2-rail DC-powered track laid directly under the center of the riverbed. An Atlas diesel locomotive pulls a flat car on this track, and that flat car carries a large magnet on it. The bottom of the boat is actually a steel plate which is attracted to the pull of the magnet. So as the train under the riverbed moves slowly around its track, invisible magnetic attraction propels the boat through the water. Steve replaced the main hull of the boat with styrofoam to provide more buoyancy for the craft and counteract the additional weight of that steel plate. Sure looks real, doesn't it? Back in our little village, a transformation has taken place. During the Christmas season, the Oglebay crew changes the village into a snow-covered winter wonderland to make it look like the season. Everywhere you look in the village, it looks cold and wintry. The Oglebay crew uses dry tree flocking to simulate snow. It's carefully sifted onto this section of the layout, and the result is a very realistic-looking winter scene. Here and there around the village, folks are enjoying the activities of winter, and these skaters look like they're having a great time. With winter comes longer nights and shorter days, and of course, the Christmas season, where the local church takes a big role in the celebration. If it's Christmas, that means getting a Christmas tree, and it looks like this local dealer is almost sold out. It's getting late, and at this hour, the passenger station is a quiet and lonely place. It's even Christmas at the local jail, and I'm happy to report that the jail is empty tonight. The peaceful music of Christmas brings this beautiful wintry evening to a close. One of the things that makes the Oglebay Park Miniature Railroad and Village so unique is the quality of the scenery and structures on the railroad. Over a ton of hydrocal was used to make all the mountains and rock castings. Dan Kasunik and Georgianne Durbin, park staffers, spent many hours applying the hydrocal using strips of paper towel dipped in the hydrocal mix. These gorgeous mountains are almost as tough as the real thing. The rock castings add a lot to the realistic look of the mountain scenery, and they are actually models of real rocks found in Oglebay Park. Don Busey used Castaflex latex to make molds of rocks he found around the park, and then used those molds to make these gorgeous rocks out of hydrocal. However, big rocks, high sandstone cliffs, and railroad tracks sometimes don't get along well together. The division roadmaster has a little problem here, but the wreck crew is on duty, and they'll have this small slide cleared and the siding reopened for traffic very soon. This well-done scenery, combined with Steve Lemley's beautiful background painting, helps create many realistic scenes, because everywhere you look, all you see is this delightful miniature world. Like any world-class model railroad display, there's more to this railroad than just trains. It's the little scenes, like this mountain lake, complete with a footbridge across it, that set the truly good model train layouts apart from the others. The water from this mountain lake is used here at the grist mill. The flowing water turns the water wheel, providing the energy for the millworks inside. Other little scenes are everywhere, like this tire swing, or this animated oil well. The Oglebay Miniature Railroad and Village must be a good imaginary place to live, because here's a new house being built for a new neighbor. The railroad has more heavy industry on the line, like this coal mine. Coal is the lifeblood of many railroads in West Virginia, because there's a lot of excellent coal to be mined in those hills. The coal mine operations on this railroad generate a lot of imaginary business for the line. Here at the mine, there are other smaller scenes to enjoy. And there's also time for a little relaxing over at the fishing hole. The local airport is on the next hilltop, and like many West Virginia airports, this one was made by cutting off the top of a hillside. It can be a dangerous approach, and this guy, well, he didn't make it. Down in the valley below the mine, on the riverbank, the Oglebay crew has installed this delightful amusement park. If this park were real, it would be a lot of fun to go to. There are rides for the kids, bigger rides for the adults, and a miniature train ride that kids of all ages can enjoy. This is actually a little N-scale model train with O-gauge people riding in it. It's a good example of how to use different scales on the same layout and have everything still look right. Here's another example of a good use of a smaller scale train. This Climax locomotive operates way up at the top of a distant mountain on a logging line. It's actually an HO scale train, but it looks right because of the distance. Lynn Westcott, former editor of Model Railroader magazine, called this little trick forced perspective, and it really works. Over on the logging line is the Kovach Lumber Company's sawmill and lumber yard. This mill was built by Les Kovach, an Oglebay staff member. It's a Keystone Locomotive Works kit, which Les modified a little to make it unique for this layout. Up at the railhead, this animated logging crane sets the logs on the flume, where they're skidded down to the mill. This beautiful scene took over 100 hours of work to complete. This railroad was built in some pretty rugged country, and it's inspected often to be sure it's safe. High bridges and tunnels add to the fascination of this part of the railroad. Business is booming, and the log trains often run well into the night, hauling logs off the mountain. The centerpiece of this display is the two huge bridges that span the river valley below. This gorgeous cantilever arch bridge was built by Bob Gladden, another staff member. Bob modeled this bridge after both the Diablo Canyon Bridge out west and the famous New River Gorge Bridge near Beckley, West Virginia. Entirely constructed of basswood, it is amazingly strong. And remember this huge curved trestle built by Pat Kelly? Well, here's what it looks like with a train on it. Isn't that nice? The intricate construction of this bridge is amazing to see, and Pat has done a marvelous job on the details. The bridge even includes the water barrels that were commonplace on wooden trestles like this in case of a fire. The bridges, structures, scenery, and animated scenes all form a backdrop for the real stars of this show, the trains. Oglebay Park Miniature Railroad is large enough to handle even the biggest locomotives and the longest trains. Here's a Union Pacific Big Boy, a model of the biggest steam locomotive ever made. This locomotive is pulling a long 52-car train, yet it looks right at home on this huge model railroad. You could spend a lot of time enjoying the action on this well-done railroad, but there's a lot more to see and do at Oglebay Park. Outdoors, there's a larger train that you can ride. It takes folks all the way around the good zoo at Oglebay. Here's a quick look at a few other Oglebay attractions, including their real claim to fame, the Festival of Lights. The Fantasy Light Tunnel is an exciting experience as you drive through 22 brilliantly lighted arches sparkling with over 2,000 lights. The good zoo is bedecked for the holidays and offers many exciting features for everyone. At every turn along the way, you'll see dazzling lights decorating the park's beautiful evergreens. Just around the bend, a giant swan and family of ducks glitter on beautiful Schenck Lake. This is Ornament Way. Giant tree ornaments, suspended from candy canes, border the road as you pass the park's donation booth. Contributions by visitors help to support Oglebay's Winter Festival. As you continue your drive, you'll see tunnels of majestic trees glittering with over 100,000 lights. This little girl's favorite companion is the elaborately lit hobby horse that stands over 23 feet high. This beautiful display is one of the most photographed on the Festival of Lights tour. Here's an all-time favorite. The holly wreath measures 60 feet across and the candy canes are 30 feet high. Dazzling trees lead the way through this path of Christmas magic. At the entrance to Spidell Championship Golf Course is a display right from the pages of the classic bedtime story, Cinderella. The Star-Spangled Banner is a brilliant background for the Statue of Liberty and the Liberty Bell. This colorful display is covered with over 4,000 lights. This Toyland favorite, 2 stories tall, pops up before your eyes with over 3,000 lights to display the Jack-in-the-Box. A glowing 60-foot wreath of giant poinsettias encircles towering Christmas candles over 30 feet high. A welcome stopover is the Ham Clubhouse, a cheerful pause during the tour of lights. Everything for Christmas can be found in this special gift shop, including custom-made mementos of the Festival of Lights. You can enjoy a hearty snack, beverage, and dessert in the club's restaurant. The 12 Days of Christmas. As you leave Spidell, this marvelous Christmas carol is brought to life. This display covers the length of a football field and sparkles with over 28,000 lights. Oglebay's Carriage House Glass Center attracts visitors all year long with an impressive variety of glassware for sale, as well as a fascinating glass museum. And right next door at the year-round Christmas shop, visitors can find a variety of holiday treasures. Oglebay's crowning jewel is this elegant 19th century mansion museum. This was the original summer home of Colonel Earl W. Oglebay. In the tradition of an earlier Christmas, these Victorian carolers add a touch of nostalgia to this magnificent setting. The rooms of this beautiful home are decorated for the holidays by the area's leading designers. Day or night, the hospitality of Wilson Lodge invites you to dining and lodging unmatched in the area. Family dining is at its best in the Ihlenfeld dining room. Seats with a spectacular view of the park are available on 3 windowed terraces. How about a splash in the indoor pool? Or relax in the soothing waters of the jacuzzi? Millions of watts of light cover 300 acres of breathtaking countryside, sparkling with over 500,000 light bulbs and sights you'll cherish for years. This is Oglebay, celebrating every holiday season with the Festival of Lights. Oglebay Park is a wonderful place to visit, and if you're a train buff, you owe it to yourself to see this miniature railroad and village. It's a world-class model railroad with just the right combination of big-time railroading and small-town nostalgia. Located on West Virginia Route 88, just north of Wheeling, Oglebay is easy to find. It's only 2 miles off Interstate 70 at exit 2A. You can visit this beautiful model railroad 365 days a year. Operating hours vary with the season, and you can always find out what they are by calling Oglebay at 800-624-6988 or by visiting the Oglebay Worldwide website at www.oglebay-resort.com. Thanks for joining us on this video tour of the Oglebay Miniature Railroad and Village. Come and see us sometime soon, won't you?